the right to sell legal stocks and bonds to finance business. People free to organize and conduct any legal business for profit. Our system stimulates initiative, industry, creativity, and independence. And it develops the natural resources of the nation and ensures large production of goods and services and employment to many people. In the face of what we have to offer, how do communists gain control of non-communist governments? Let's take a look. By military occupation, by expelling non-communist officials, by the army appointing puppet officials, by obtaining military and police powers, controlling the legislative procedures, by propaganda creating political and economic unrest, controlling the courts, terrorizing political and economic opponents, by obtaining government positions and secrets. Khrushchev uttered these words: "We respect all peoples and are in favor of each settling for itself which order is better for it."
This is Budapest, Hungary, October 1956. University students are demonstrating their approval of Poland's successful defiance of the Soviet Union. Their ranks quickly swell with public support. They assemble in the tens of thousands to hear members of their writers' union oppose the Communist Party government leaders for oppressing freedom, distorting the truth, exploiting labor, and abusing the farmers. The students demand an end to Soviet domination. They want their own flag without the Soviet emblem in it, the symbol of alien rule. Khrushchev had this to say, quote, "The lesson of the events in Hungary where the counter-revolution used some writers for its filthy ends reminds us of what political carelessness can lead to in relation to the intrigues of the forces hostile to socialism," unquote. The students post their own program of 16 points, including a demand for a new government to resist Soviet oppression. They march to the Budapest radio station to make their program known to the nation and to the world. Their delegates are arrested. The angry crowd refuses to disperse until their student leaders are free and defied the communist security police open fire with machine guns, not water hoses. Freedom fighters rally to fight the Soviet tanks moving in during the night. Khrushchev said, "We had force in our hands and the truth was on our side. Our truth is the truth of the workers. We were faced with the question, what to do? Reason urged that we help the workers and the working class of the Hungarian People's Republic. Comrades believed me that it was difficult for us to make a decision, but we considered that we could not remain indifferent spectators when emboldened fascist elements embarked on bestial outrages against workers, peasants, communists, and others of the best representatives of the working class of Hungary," unquote. Translation, Russians go home. These are Molotov cocktails, a homemade concoction of Russian recipe. They prove most effective against the Soviet tanks. The Russian drive bogs down. The Soviets are forced to lift the siege of the Kilian barracks, where a hastily organized defense under Colonel Paul Molitor has withstood a violent assault. The inscription reads, "Free Hungarian Radio." A free press rolls. Cardinal Mindszenty, imprisoned for 8 years, sees the light of a great day. We quote Khrushchev, "You think that the communist system in this or that country can be maintained only with the help of our armed forces? I would not fight for such a communist system. The communist system must be based on the will of the people, and if the people do not wish this system, let them establish the way of life they prefer best," unquote. The Soviets start to evacuate themselves from the city and go to great lengths to convince the Hungarian populace that they're getting out for good. Hungarians make a holiday out of seeing the families of Soviet officials leaving the city bag and baggage. Hungarian army soldiers and freedom fighters rejoice in their victory. Here is János Szabo, one of the citizen heroes to emerge from the revolution. Minister of State of the new government, Kilde, and Molitor, now a major general, are invited to the headquarters of the Soviet High Command to discuss the withdrawal of the Soviet troops. It's a trap. Molitor is never to return, and the Hungarian army in Budapest is left without a commander. Now Soviet bombers signal the beginning of a crushing tank assault on the city, backed by big guns. Khrushchev explained, quote, "We are convinced that the Hungarian working class will never give the counter-revolution an opportunity to raise its head. We must warn amateurs against all kinds of provocations. The Soviet Union is always ready to come to the aid of its friends and resist the enemies of socialism. It is well known that in their attempts to undermine the foundations of the people's democratic system, the enemies of socialism were relying on the young people, trying to deceive them with false slogans and to deflect them from the correct path. In connection with this, we must constantly increase our vigilance and pay more attention to the correct upbringing of young people." 3 months following tributes paid him as a hero of the revolution, patriot János Szabo was hanged.
From its inception, communism has sought to beguile, to deceive, to ensnare, and to employ others to unwittingly serve its goal of worldwide domination. The idealism of youth has been misused to bring about social upheaval and political chaos. Communism is not interested in healing any breach or resolving any schism. Rather, it agitates, foments, and exploits human problems. Of course, in America, we have the freedom to dissent and to criticize existing policies so long as we follow legal processes. This freedom of speech and expression is a precious part of our free society. We must not carelessly use this freedom, thus weakening or destroying the system that makes it possible. The most powerful evidence of the unparalleled advantages and values of our American system is the freedom it allows its own critics. Let's keep it. One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Our purpose, I believe, is quite clear. It is to seek a greater awareness among us of the true nature and the true goals of those forces we oppose, to clarify and to reveal the methods by which they would hope to further those goals. As I said at the beginning of this subject, I believe the time of choice is imminent.
Lily, you actually lived under the communism in China. Now I'm curious, since we've last had you on, there's been a lot of developments with the vaccine mandates and all that stuff. I'm curious what your thoughts are on all of it and the similarities.
Well, I'm so encouraged by this truckers' freedom convoy. That's like, I have never seen Canadians are so excited about their country. We saw the Canadian socialist country. I have been telling people their vaccine passport have a QR code on your cell phone. It will be just like China's social credit system. They track you nonstop, 24 hours a day.
Wow.
You have no privacy. Well, I have seen this one guy show me in Las Vegas his QR code on his cell phone from Saudi Arabia. He said, Lily, I have to have 3 shots in order to travel to Las Vegas for business. Wow. I said, well, how do you show them the papers? I show you. He showed me his QR code on his cell phone. I said, that looks like China's cell phone, social credit system. You're being tracked 24 hours a day. He said, what choice do I have? So I'm telling people in this country, Western world, if you let them to do that, it's end of you, basic human freedom.
It's Black Mirror. It's how have we made a TV show about this, and now it's not even been a couple of years, and we're already enacting it.
Yes, exactly.
I have friends of friends, stories I've heard about people who are currently traveling around in China, and it's like, oh yeah, you have to scan everything to get in everywhere. Mm-hmm. You got to be completely up to date, and then to get into any building, it's scanned and all tracked everywhere you go.
Well,
for Beijing Olympics, which are coming down, they're locking down. So they have to be very careful about this because they don't want to lock down Beijing itself. And so the Olympics start, in two or 3 days, I think, and 3 days. And they're locking down various districts of Beijing, but they're not actually locking down the main centers yet. Now, they have this thing called the bubble, or if you're they call it being in the loop when you come in. But they're because they're pursuing the zero COVID strategy, even with that, they've had breakthrough cases inside that bubble. So what are they doing? If you're anywhere near there, if a single case comes out, they will lock you down inside a shopping mall. They're locking down entire office buildings.
For how long?
Until everyone tests negative.
So zero COVID.
Zero COVID strategy.
So you're trapped in a mall for like 2 weeks.
So you're whatever it is.
Wow.
You're just locked in there.
I'm not surprised they were welding people's doors shut.
Precisely.
Yeah. I don't know why IOC would not delay it or change location. And they also changed the human rights rules that they want to apply to, Paris, to other places, but not to Beijing. There's lots of questions needed to be raised. What is IOC doing in Beijing now with all that strict zero COVID lockdowns?
Well, are the athletes going to protest it and bail out, or are they just going to go along with it?
I haven't seen any athletes protesting it because I remember too, like go back and look at the Rio Olympics, which were just a couple of years ago, and when Zika virus was going on, and I remember a lot of athletes saying, "Hey, I'm not going to go to Rio because I don't want Zika." Right? Well, we're seeing the exact same thing with the Omicron Olympics. But to answer your question, what's up with the IOC? I mean, it's pretty simple, and this is what I actually wrote about in Newsweek. And NBC's sending out this hitman to come after me. Is that I've heard people describe the relationship as something like elite capture, like the CCP has captured American elites, but it's not like that. It's actually elite merger. That's what we're seeing across the world. And so, yes, there's this argument over who gets to be senior partner and who gets to be junior partner. But at the end of the day, this has been a merger that's been in place for almost 30 years now, certainly since their ascension to the WTO. And that's why when you see these things like Hunter Biden's laptop or the fact that Barbara Boxer, the former senator from California, is now a registered agent of a CCP surveillance company, which actually makes the cameras for Xinjiang. Right? I mean, you could go look at this stuff up.
But
right?
can you say it like Alex Jones now?
Oh, right. Well, you see, 30 years. 30 years. They've been sending us up. They've been selling us out. They've been selling out your children. They're going to be hooked up to the CCP machines.
It's funny because when you talk about, you have, what is that picture of Klaus Schwab holding the Great Reset book or something?
Right.
The media told us it's a conspiracy theory. There's no Great Reset. And he's like smiling with his book.
But he wrote the book.
It's just so insane how, I got to say, it does feel like we're winning when you get stories like the truckers pushing back, them starting to back down. They couldn't pull off what they thought they could pull off. And what I mean by that, I mean like these authoritarian political establishment elite types.
But you know what'll come next, right? You just wait. Give this like a couple of more days of the trucker protests, and you're immediately going to see the media flood the zone. Mark my words, screenshot this, whatever. I know we're live. You will see the media pushing stories about self-driving trucks very, very soon as a response to all of this.
Yeah.
And suddenly, and like, I remember, because Yang talked about this a lot, and you're going to say, oh no, it'll be so great, and they won't get in accidents, and time will, they'll be able to travel faster because they don't have the time restrictions that truckers have, etc. That's the next thing that's coming, guaranteed.
Let me pull up this story we got from the Daily Mail. Police threaten to arrest truckers blockading the U.S. border in Alberta unless they leave. Cops give Freedom Convoy an ultimatum after their one-time cheerleader, Justin Trudeau, turned on them for protesting his vaccine mandates. So, ultimately, the RCMP...
All those citizen journalists, they are locked up. We don't know where they are.
People
and they could be dying of some disease or something you don't know. There's a big difference. That's why it's so important for people who love freedom to appreciate what they have now. You got to fight so hard to keep it,
Well,
Yep.
If I could ask you, Lily, what is one thing that you think Americans need to band together and do right now to prevent our country from becoming like the one you left?
Well, that's why I'm running for U.S. Congress, right? Because I say why I'm running, because I fear the country I love is becoming like the country I loved. And it's getting worse and worse. Not 2 years. I could not sleep. I saw the writings on the wall, and I saw the similar tactics and features, what's going on in this country with the multicultural revolution. I survived. I just feel like it's like when you see your neighbor's house on fire, they don't know what should I do. I see it. I got to warn them, right? Hey, your house is on fire. So our country is going down that path very fast. I have to do something about it. And the lots of Americans, when I go out to speak about my stories, they're all very interested in listening to me. But it's like, how come they did not listen to some stories, learn history about it before? So look into our educational system. Right?
Yeah.
So are you running for the Libertarian Party, or?
I'm running as a Republican.
Oh, as a Republican.
Yes, I have run as before in Colorado. LP has no ballot access, and the Republican Party in New Hampshire is quite good. There are lots of people like me inside to make things happening. Like lots of them in State House, in State Senate, we're passing some very good laws right now, and we already passed a whole bunch last year that are now Democrats trying to reverse them. They're trying to sue our state now to forbid schools to teach discrimination when race is more superior or inferior than others. What's wrong with that? It's in our state constitution. You cannot teach discrimination in schools. But they say, well, we cannot teach history anymore. We are so afraid of discussions of slavery, which is not true.
Yeah, I see the memes all day and night. So my Facebook is comprised of populists across the board. I mean, Occupy Wall Street was a big populist movement, and it's split in a lot of ways. A lot of people who supported Occupy ended up supporting Trump later on. Many of them went for Bernie. So it's surprising when I see the divide, and it really is a stark contrast. What I see from the left outright says the right has stepped up to banning books on slavery. They're overtly racist and white supremacist, and like that's just fundamentally not true.
It's a lie.
They're pushing that lie about the book Mouse.
Total lie.
Total lie. So they're saying the book has been banned.
If your book is available on the rack at Barnes and Noble, it's not banned.
Well, if you can bring it into the school and you can read it, it's not banned.
Right.
So the story is essentially that they voted to remove it from the curriculum. It's like, okay, there's a lot of books that aren't in school curriculum. They're not all banned. Imagine if they were like, we have 500 books in the curriculum. That means 10 billion books are banned? That's insane. But with the narrative that's coming out is, oh no, they're banning books, and there's nothing you can say to change any of their minds because there is a tribal narrative.
Another thing I want to say that I testified in state capitol because the teachers union supporters want to reverse our laws, right? And they are suing our state. And you got about 20 people showed up to testify, support that the bill. And you got two aging, women who fled communism to give our strong 2 cents. They were totally outnumbered, 2 to 20. But we went there without the paper in front of us. We just told our stories. And I called out the NEA. I said, well, if you look at the NEA National, the largest union national website, they said clearly budget to teach critical race theory into 14,000 school districts. But the people say, oh, we're not teaching critical race theory schools. Really? I said, welcome you, New Hampshire chapter of NEA, to come out, make public statement about that. Because I said, if you want to teach real history, I'm leaving history. I would like to go to your school, teach your kids about communism. How about that?
Yeah.
Let's do it. Yeah.
Yeah.
They should.
So you're running for the Republican nomination? Like
yes,
the primary is coming up?
there are 5 Republican men in the primary with me, and I welcome all good men, but I have a compelling, unique story, and I understand how precious our freedom is. I feel confident with the grassroots support. Hey, everybody's watching, please. LilyTangWilliams.com, $10, and I can win. I can be front runner tonight. You can make me front runner tonight in the Republican primary to say, hey, we love Lily. She's representing the common people, and she is a fierce freedom fighter. Why not let her?
Are you involved with the Free State Project?
I moved there and signed a pledge to make maximum efforts to create a free society. I was attacked for that by the left when I was running for Little Tang, supervisor of the checklist, because it's nonpartisan race. But when they found out I was a free stater, they come attack me, and
why? Shouldn't they be for freedom?
I know.
Live free or die.
So
Yeah,
that's
it's the
how
whole
sad.
point of
Right?
state.
That's the
but they granted progressives come out, organize workshops in the libraries every election year to tell people who are the free staters. We are the radical and right-wing nuts, something like that. The sense of they even don't understand how organization work. Everybody goes there And once they sign the pledge, you move there, you do whatever you want. It's up to you. There's no dues. There's no requirement. You're on your own. And I choose my own course,
So you're running for federal Congress, right?
Yes. And if I win the nomination, I will be the historically first Chinese immigrant from mainland China who survived communism to be nominee of a Republican Party in the country.
And then when you get to Washington, will you do everything in your efforts to repeal unconstitutional gun bans, and things like that?
Of course, if you have not seen if you have not seen my John Stossel interview, I was holding my AR-15.
I love it.
In front of U.S. flag. I was attacked also by some local left people to say, she looked very scary.
They're losers.
She's holding AR-15. I said, well, I am a survivor of communism. Yeah. I believe Second Amendment right. Otherwise, all the students in Tiananmen Square will not be killed without a fight, right?
That's right.
And you tell me that I look scary. I'm 5'1", a Chinese woman, and I'm very intimidating, So they're afraid of guns, basically. So I think that's part of the problem. People are afraid of guns. Have they tried to handle guns in shooting range? When I first come to the United States, first time touch gun, I was scared too. So I don't know what to do. I was like, people say, no, don't point at people. Lady number one rule.
yes,
don't
number
point
one
at
rule.
people.
Do not.
You should teach Alec Baldwin.
I scared.
No.
I scared all my husband's family is like, God, I forgot you're from China. You never touch guns. I feel so empowered when I first time hold a gun in my hands, fire first shot.
Yeah.
It's like, wow, because I never had that feeling. I was deprived of gun ownership. 1.4 billion Chinese today deprived the self-defense right. That's why they're quiet. That's why they comply no matter how bad their life become. What can you do?
People don't realize about the Second Amendment. The left often says, what are you going to do? Rise up against the government, blah, blah. No, that's not what it's about. It's, for one, it's a force balancer. So you mentioned Tiananmen Square. They roll out these tanks, right? So and then basically, you tell me exactly what happened with Tiananmen Square. They came and they killed all these students.
So what happens that when the premier of China, Hu Yaobang, he was the one not just advocate for economical freedom. He was talking about we should have political freedom as well. So we were in college and let's talk about it. Let's have a conversation. What kind of country we want? Can we become a Western democracy countries? People can vote, can have a dialogue with our leaders. So they were peaceful. But when this leader died, and they were actually just going to Tiananmen Square to mourn his death. Lots of, those Chinese, and flowers and all that. But then after a couple of weeks, and people start to say, hey, we want to have dialogue with our leaders. They were not calling to overthrow the government. No, they just say, can we have a dialogue? Can we be represented? Can we have a continued dialogue about political freedom, like a right to vote and right to appeal, rule of law? And at the beginning, the government was quiet. And then more and more students show up. And more students start in other cities of the province, like capitals, like my hometown. And even when Gorbachev visited China that time, by the time it was like 400,000 students at Tiananmen Square. And they had to reroute for him to visit the state. So after that, I heard that Deng Xiaoping, back then was the leader, and talked to the military in Beijing to say, and go rowing to the Tiananmen Square. But the Beijing troops knew those were our best and brightest students and peaceful. They were not going to kill them. And you see citizens come out, beg them to leave, and literally have offered them water and bread to when they're hungry to say, leave. They're not threats. They're not counter-revolutionaries. Go home. So Beijing general actually later got fired because Beijing troops left.
Wow.
That Deng Xiaoping went back to Hubei, where Wuhan is capital, to say, go to Tiananmen Square. Whole bunch of young people, counter-revolutionaries, are trying to overthrow the government.
Traitors.
Traitors, basically.
They killed them all.
10,000 estimated to die that
So
day.
what people need to understand about the Second Amendment, that story, What would have happened if they actually were armed? I don't think it would have escalated to a major conflict. It would have escalated to a dialogue, because the government would be like, "Look, we're not going to go in there. People there have weapons, and we don't. It could go south real quick. So we need to figure out how to defuse this." In the United States, a lot of these, large instances, these large moments where the left is like, "What do you think you're going to do? Rise up against the government?" Blah blah blah. No, it just never escalates to that point, because they know that there's a mutually assured destruction. But a really good example of the deterring effect and the balancing, the force balancer, is the Breonna Taylor story. The police kicked the door in. Breonna Taylor's boyfriend returned fire, hitting a cop with a bullet. The cop was bleeding from the leg. They fired. They killed Breonna Taylor, but the charges were dropped against the boyfriend because he had a right to keep and bear arms and defend his home. Mm-hmm. That means the police in this country know a law-abiding citizen may be armed, and if you try and break into their house and violate their rights, you could die. Mm-hmm. You could die. And Breonna Taylor's boyfriend did not get in trouble. I mean, they pushed him through it a little bit, but eventually just was like, look, it was lawful self-defense of his house. So in a country like, you look at these videos out of Australia or the UK, the cops kick the door and they walk in, they do whatever they want. Well, in the United States, not so much. Still, yes, they do, but not so much.
Well, that's why if you look at my past, 2013, I published open ad by National Review Online to say guns against tyranny. And I talk about Tiananmen Square. I talk about Chinese people feel powerless to defend themselves, their families, and anybody can kick your door open. And I was told when I live a very poor, illiterate working parents neighborhood, say, hey, if criminals come, go grab our choppers in the kitchen. Like when you do bones and chickens, you use those. Chopsticks don't do any sense, so you have to just grab the knives, So when I come to this country, when I first time got passionately involved in politics, because 2013, the Democrats in Colorado wanted to limit the AR-15 magazines. So I testified. First time, I did not know how to testify in this long line. I had to go in with somebody, my smart rat, my husband called me straight rat. I survived China. So I said, I'm not going to get in there, testify. The line is so long, it'll be midnight. But I saw somebody is expert witness, like a president of Rocky Mountain Gun Owner Association say, hey, can I go in with you? Because I survived China. I want to give my 2 cents. He said, okay, come with me. So I went in with him. First time I testified in my life, in my new country, to say what you're doing is a communist way. We need to have a second mind. The right to defend ourselves is our God-given right. Are you becoming like a communist? Well, nobody said anything, but they passed the bill along the party night. I become political activist after that.
What's good for you?
枪杆子里面出主权.
Yes, that's Chairman Mao's quote.
Chairman Mao is the one who said this perfectly. Political power grows from the barrel of a gun. And then what did the CCP do? They banned all the guns.
Well, when the PRC founded in 1949, my dad told me he remembered. Because before that, some people still have some guns, even though Nationalist Party by Chiang Kai-shek also started to have gun control laws because, he was kind of corrupt too. But after PRC, the communists said, turn over all your guns, whatever you have in your house, including those people who were supposed to be kind of like a little bit like a militia group. Turn your guns. Or we search door by door. Mm-hmm. Then you go to jail if we find a gun in your house.
I love this point. I hate that I'm able to make it when these Democrat types say no one is trying to take your guns away. I just say Waco. And then if they don't know what it is, I'll be like, how many children are worth killing so that you can take guns?
Ruby Ridge.
Yeah.
There are lots of cases to prove. And the people, unless some people will say, I guarantee you 100% that our government in the U.S. will not become tyrants. Who can guarantee that? If you don't trust that, then gun debate is over.
It's simple. Over a long enough period of time, a system that has centralized authority, if you have 100 leaders and you have a system of centralized authority and 99 of them are good people, but you end up finally getting that one dictator, then he goes nuts and seizes more power and kills people. We just shouldn't have that centralized kind of power.
Just like Mao, right? Mao's like sociopath. So you don't have a rule of law. You have a rule of man. What if you run into 7 madmen? And when I was growing up as one madman, sociopath, 20 million people died during his Cultural Revolution.
So you go through the Cultural Revolution in China. You come to the U.S. You're in Colorado, and you said 2013, I think, right? And now, how do you? I mean, I kind of asked you this already, but seeing everything that's going on right now, it's got to be kind of like, I don't know, nerve-wracking. You're like, I left China to get away from this, and now these countries are doing similar things, and they're ramping up towards this authoritarianism.
Well, that like defectors from Russia, they said that too. Said they will corrupt the free world one little bit, socialism, every day. So they sell you free stuff first. So our young people need to realize that free stuff is what they use to get you interested in socialism, because every equity, I mean, they don't realize that is a communist term. So once you get into the door, you vote for them, and they have total control. All of a sudden, you cannot vote anymore.
Yep.
And you cannot have guns anymore. You cannot have private property anymore. And your children don't belong to you, they belong to the state. And you don't have a medical decision anymore. We have seen plenty of that in the past 2 years. That's why I feel like I can do more now by going to run for office, so I can get my messages out.
I want to pull up this tweet here from Benny Johnson. Savage. Canadian Conservative leader puts final nail in Trudeau's coffin in Parliament in front of the whole world. This is a truly epic 30-second smackdown. And the reason I think this clip is important is that it shows, for all of the bad that's been happening in Western countries. But I mean, are there Americans who defected to China who love communism and want to live under that, speaking in the media, being like, America's terrible and China's so good?
I don't remember any. That's why I think we need volunteers. So they communist professors from this country and social justice warriors. Please go to China.
I love it. Send them over there.
Yeah, I will pay for that.
I know you will.
You do see, though, if you turn on Chinese state media, so CGTV, they used to call it CCTV9, but they changed it to CGTV. You will see Westerners on there, American and British professors in some cases, who are going on that are delivering, these essential CCP talking points on these things, talking about, oh, it's so great that China has the Olympics.
Yeah, paid.
It's so wonderful. Yeah, they're all being paid.
Yeah, they're making money.
And you track it down, and they had some maybe adjunct assistant faculty position somewhere at some college that nobody's ever heard of. Yet when they go to China, they're feted as this great American scholar, and here they are, and they are paid to push the company line. And we see this again and again and again. This is why there is an actual elite merger going on. I mean, and it isn't even just, there was that Harvard professor who was Charles Lieber, who was finally convicted. He hasn't been sentenced yet, but you're seeing some of the stuff with MIT, the scientists at GSK who just got arrested in Philadelphia area, who were digging into, of course, monoclonal antibodies. So this has been going on more and more and more. And yeah, there are people who are doing it, but I don't necessarily know if they're doing it because they believe it or they're just being paid.
Well, remember the Confucius Institute? How naive we were. Allow a Chinese government-funded organization called Confucius Institute go into our colleges, set up schools in middle school, high school to teach our children about China and glorify China. Yeah. And until they wake up, it's like 15 years later, they have infiltrated China, United States, Canada, Australia, and now you know what happened in Australia? And you got Hong Kong protesters, right, to support the Hong Kong student movement. You got pro-Beijing people, and they were fighting in EU, and they're fighting in Australia. Two sides are equal. It's like, wow, communists are in the Western democracy countries everywhere.
Yeah, I should just point out, with people like LeBron James and Mark Cuban, and even I think Elon Musk has made some positive statements about China as well. Maybe they're not just in China, going on Chinese shows and being like, man, China's so great. And when I see China becoming more like America, I say, we have to stop this. We have to make, but you have LeBron James, you have the NBA, you have American companies. So it's probably worse.
So Elon, and I think I talked about this before last time I was on the show, he's got his Twitter, and on his Twitter, he'll be very, he almost like libertarian sounding sometimes, right? On his Twitter account. But Elon's also got a WeChat account and he's got a Weibo account. So this is Chinese social media, and he'll go on there and he's congratulating the CCP on their 100-year anniversary. He's congratulating the Chinese government. He's opening his new Tesla showroom where in Xinjiang, in the actual province where the Uyghurs are all being locked up. So, just something to show that, he's clearly got a different message depending which audience he's talking to.
So what ends up happening here in the United States? Are we going to see active resistance? When we look over at Quebec, we have the trucker protest, we have the Freedom Convoy. They're pulling back the vax tax. They're worried about social cohesion. But there are some countries in Europe that are doubling down, like Austria, and they've made the vaccine compulsory. I'm wondering, what happens here in the United States? Because I just don't see at this point how you could possibly unite the left and the right. The barrier is solidified. They believe completely different things. They will not listen to a word you say. It is just two sides with no middle ground.
I can unite at least the people of New Hampshire and the country, because I'm the inconvenient minority who knows the strengths, exception in the United States, but also knows the division of society that caused by government and the media colluding together to divide people.
Yeah.
But I agree. But I mean, look, they say the funny point that was brought up to us in a super chat was that the left claims black people can't be racist, but Candace Owens is racist. I just feel like there is no compromising.
And Whoopi Goldberg is perfectly fine.
I know. Right. Look, Roseanne Barr gets fired from her show for making an off-color joke. Whoopi Goldberg outright makes crazy statements about the Holocaust, and they're like, well, yes.
All we have to
whatever.
do is speak to people who are confused, independent, in the middle, that this kind of division is very dangerous to our country and our children, because it's a typical communist tactic. Like by Mao, he separated people into oppressor versus oppressed. Sounds familiar today?
Yes, it does. Yep.
And the 5 black classes under oppressor, and 5 red classes under oppressed. Then going through struggle sessions and get people hate each other, and they control all the media. Remember, Xinhua News Agency was a private media company when the CCP founded 1920s. Later, they become the largest propaganda machine in the world. So I don't buy into our is big tech, they're just private company. Are you sure? 100% private? No government pressure, no government investment, and no PCs? No, look at the Xinhua News Agency. So we have to I want to treat people with respect. I know both sides sometimes, I think we need to tone down a little bit to say, I respect you opinions, even though I don't agree with you, but I'm willing to listen to you and have conversation with you.
Well, it's interesting because even these large social media companies in the organizations we refer to as big tech, many of them have investment from In-Q-Tel, which is actually a United States government-run venture capital firm. What I would like to ask you, Lily, is have you had any success at reaching Americans who identified as communists or socialists as opposed to the people in the center?
I give you an example. I have been going to colleges for past 4 years to speak to students. Mm-hmm. When I went to West Virginia, right here, the university, one Bernie Sanders supporter come to listen to my story, my talk. He stayed for a long time. 2 weeks later, he went back to Turning Point USA organizer and host to say, please tell Lily, she changed my mind.
Amazing.
Wow.
And now he joined the Turning Point USA.
Wow.
Government sucks, and I realized it's the government.
You didn't ask her to say that. That was
I don't think the Republican Party is the answer. I think it's got to be the people getting out and voting in the primaries, voting locally. I say it whatever it is, if you don't know what it is, I remember seeing, in Chicago, it was vote for comptroller, and I'm like, I don't know what that is. But you've got to know what it is. You've got to vote for these people, because what happens is even your school board ends up getting taken over by, Marxists, communists, far leftists. And we've seen this in West Virginia. People from the DC area that are ultra woke, far left, move out there specifically to get elected to school boards so they can start indoctrinating kids in conservative areas, in moderate areas, in apolitical areas. That's what they want to do. They want to spread that message. So you've got to pay attention to who these people are. You got to know who you're voting for. You got to vote local. You got to vote for your state rep, your state senator. You got to vote in the primaries, because you're running in the primary. And if people want someone like you to win, they got to go out in the primaries to vote.
Yes. And
Otherwise, you get neocon establishment Republicans.
yes, and you cannot be afraid. You cannot be afraid to call white supremacist, racist. You have to reject that. Those people who call you that, they just don't know the history. If they're young, or if they do that, it's a Marxist, communist tactic. Don't be afraid of them calling. We have to counter-strike to say you are Marxist.
Did you see that Ted Lieu tweeted at Ron DeSantis or whatever, and he's like, "It's not hard to condemn Nazis, Ron." I saw that and I was just like, at this point, I don't think there is any
Time for talk and time to discuss sometimes just becomes so hard to find now peacefully. I really prefer we use our constitutional republic system to choose your truly representative in DC, so we don't have to use our Second Amendment. Of course, that's something you cannot compromise. That's our last resort to fight for our freedom. But at the same time, every year you have local town election for school board, for other council meetings, seats, and then every 2 years you have congressional elections. People just have to get out of their comfort zone to take actions. If you just keep your head down, I can guarantee you it's not going to be over. They will continue to push it. The communists will come to test your limits and will take your freedom away.
I when it comes to Second Amendment and stuff, I don't think I have the same opinion as a lot of people who think, one day you'll need to stand up for your rights. And it's like, yeah, but hold on. Yes, but this trucker convoy is just a bunch of people driving their trucks. And look how much they've accomplished and are accomplishing.
Peaceful protest worked this time, Sid.
That's right. In fact, I've said it. We're not in that era anymore where standing in a building gains you political power. What was it? With January 6th, it's like, what do you think it is, 1700s? You stand in the building, you're like, aha, we have the building, it's ours now. I don't know what that's going to do in a digital era. But if tomorrow every single person in New York City said there is no vaccine mandate, then there wouldn't be one. And the new mayor or whatever politicians can say, no, but we said, and everyone would just be like, shut up.
Yeah.
Then there would be none. So if it's not even necessarily about nonviolent civil disobedience or protest. It's about the will of the people and what they're truly willing to do.
Non-compliance.
I mean, look at it this way. Speed limit. Can't go more than 5 miles over the speed limit. That's a ticket. Literally everyone does. So therefore, it's effectively unenforceable in many ways. You might get singled out, but depending on where your jurisdiction is, you go in and be like, Your Honor, I was 4 miles over the limit. He's going to be like, get out of my courtroom. You know what I mean? So cultural enforcement is the main issue we need to strive for. And that's why when I look at the failures of the attempts at smearing, when I look at the ratings collapse of CNN, when I look at the massive popularity of shows like Joe Rogan, I'm like, we win the message. We win everything. You get all the marbles.
This is also why the trucker uprising is such an inflection point right now, because it's also revelatory in a sense, because they are actually taking action that is threatening to the regime. They are quite literally holding up the backbone of our society, and they are preventing the supply chains from being continued in certain areas and in key areas. But you're noticing, though, and I can look around, there's lots of people who run around calling themselves populist leaders. You see as a populist right, populist left, calling them conservatives, who aren't supporting the truckers or who are running around. This is, by the way, why Aaron O'Toole, who's the leader of the Conservative Party in Canada right now, just as an example, he's certainly not the only one. They're actually talking about taking away the head of the party from him because he's just not doing much to support the truckers. And I think this is an absolutely revelatory situation where this is a litmus test actually right now, that if you are not actively supporting the truckers, then what are you doing? Right? Really, what else are you doing other than saying, I need to support these guys because they are taking action that's being effective in real time. It's peaceful. It's fun. They turned it into a rave in Ottawa, right? They're not, maybe there's like 1 or 2 nut jobs who show up where, the guy's got a mask on carrying a Confederate flag. Who's even...
They threw him out.
Right. They threw him out.
Narrative. They want you to be opposed to this group. They want to turn the entire public against them because they know there's no way they're going to be able to enforce their will.
Well, I want to say something that lots of people, because they live in fear, they bought into the rhetoric, government and the media. They feel like, government mandate is good for public health.
Yes.
And for society and broader common good. But that's exactly the same as the communists sold us in China. It's for public good. You don't have gun rights because without the CCP, the China will be totally collapsed. And we're not capable of democracy either, like Taiwan people, because without CCP, there's no stability. There are two rules of propaganda. Number one, party is always right. Always right. Number two, all the medias, all the press repeat same lies every day by lots of people. You become the truth. So I have to thank you, Tim. You and Joe Rogan, all those alternative medias, and Jack, you are bring truth to people. And you trust people to decide. And I'm just trying to wake up people to say, stay away from the media, go to alternative media, and truth should give you the power and to set you free. And that way you can understand what is government mandate now. Oh, government mandate is not just a requirement, it's a force. If they mandate something you don't follow, you'll get fined. If you don't pay your fine, you're going to go to locked up. You're going to lose your job. You're going to stay home. Look what happened to Australia, right? It's just people have to understand government represents force against the regular citizens. You can choose to get a vaccine, but if you force somebody to get a vaccine, what is the freedom about if you cannot even control what this goes inside your body as medicine? That's a fundamental human right. So all those leftists support human rights should understand that government is for. Let people decide.
Amen.
So we have this story. It's from Western Standard. Now, I have to say, I'm not familiar with what Western Standard is. I've never read them before. And part of me wants to say, well, I don't know if I can trust this news outlet, but I got to be honest. When I read the mainstream media, I often know that I can't trust them. So I'll just say this. Take it with a grain of salt for what it is. This is what they're reporting. They're reporting that Alberta towing companies are rejecting requests to supply trucks to the RCMP. Quote, a lot of these smaller companies don't want to ruin their reputation in the communities they serve, so they don't want to get involved. I mean, that sounds completely correct and reasonable. I mean, imagine you have a small business. You're a tow truck driver. You know everyone loves the truckers, and the police are like, go tow. You're going to be like, no way.
And if you read down in the story, it does say that they actually were calling the tow truck companies directly to get quotes from them, and that they do have a few listed. You know, they said they talked to some people out of the Calgary area, and they've got names and specifics involved in this. So it seems like pretty good reporting. Yeah. But it's the same idea that, look, these guys are in the Calgary area.
Sounds great, the proletariat.
And it's amazing, number one, because he's a great writer. It's just he's really good at writing, giving a narrative. But also he explains that the Bolsheviks of their time, it was exactly the same as what we're living through now. So exactly the same.
Yeah, I want to add something people might not know. Workers' rule sounds great, the proletarian rule, but if you grew up in China like I did, when you actually a worker's family, you have least amount of food rationing coupons, you live in a primitive conditions, and you always looked down on. I have literally working parents. I grew up in that neighborhood. Everybody looked down on me because I'm a daughter of illiterate workers' parents, and we were starving. And then later, once communists take over, the workers cannot unionize. There's no independent unions in China because you have to have a Communist Party committee to supervise your workers' organizations. So you lose your workers' rights. Yep. So people cannot buy into that.
Yeah, you go, but I wanted to ask Lily a question in a moment.
There's a viral video on Reddit right now because on Reddit, a whole bunch of leftist extremist forums are becoming increasingly popular, like Late Stage Capitalism, Anti-Work, Work Reform. They're overtly communist, but there's a video going viral of a guy explaining how capitalism is modern slavery. And it's one of the most... I don't know if this guy, he's got a podcast where he talks about capitalism being evil. I don't know if he's just an evil guy who's lying to seize power. He wants to story. Everyone, I love the meme going around where it's like, Joe Rogan spreading misinformation. Oh, really? What did he say? Nobody knows.
See, that's how dangerous it is. It's the silence, dissident voices, mouse culture revolution. You cannot even talk to your family about anything because what if your family member report to the local Red Guards? Yeah. Then they could go to struggle sessions. So I had to self-censor. When I start to ask questions, I only ask myself inside my own head. I could not say
Well,
anything.
wait, Tim. Now, do me a favor. You're on Mehdi-Hassan's page right there. Do you see over to the right where it has Mehdi-Hassan's bio right now? Does it say where Mehdi-Hassan currently works?
Yeah, he works for NBC.
So he works for NBC, and he has a show also on NBC's Peacock, which is their streaming service. Now, I did a little digging on this, really, really deep digging. It took me, seconds of time to search this up. NBC signed an $8 billion contract with the International Olympic Committee to be their exclusive host for the Olympics all the way through 2032. And then the exclusive streaming service of the Olympics is, and it's so strange, Peacock TV, the exact same place where Mehdi-Hassan has his streaming service. So it's so strange to me that such a coincidence
Follow
that they
the
would
money.
send this guy
Follow
out
the money.
Yeah.
who has
Absolutely.
8 billion reasons to come out and be. It's like they used to actually, have front groups for this sort of thing. Now they're just doing it in the open. Like, try harder, guys. Come on.
I just saw this story, and like I mentioned, the trying to smear you, the not even reading the article, the Joe Rogan spreads lies, but we don't actually listen to his show anyway. And I'm just like, I don't think I think they've lost. I think they've outright lost.
Well, this is what
the establishment
Malice.
media. Yeah, so that's the other thing I wanted to bring up. Michael Malice responded to Mehdi-Hassan saying, impotence signaling is much funnier than virtue signaling. They've lost monopoly control over the mic and don't know what to do except sneer. Virtue signaling, of course, being like, look at me, so virtuous. I condemn that too. But now they're just going like, we can't do anything about this, so we're losers.
People are listening to Joe Rogan, and they're not. And Jack Posobiec is getting written up in Newsweek. What do we do? Well, and just to Mike, I appreciate.
So
you
what
saying
would
that,
they
having my
call
back.
me then, sitting next to Jack?
No, exactly.
You're a collaborator, I guess.
You're now a
Lily.
collaborator.
Yeah.
We're all collaborators.
We talked
Say